So why then is the GOP seemingly backing away from entitlement reform? With us now, Republican Congressman Thaddeus McCotter from Michigan. Welcome back, Congressman. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me back.
All right, is it time for reform of these programs?
Oh, clearly, as the report lays out, we're already having a negative cash outflow in Social Security, whereby we pay out more than comes in from payroll taxes. That's estimated to become completely insolvent in 2036. We're seeing this with Medicare being projected to be bankrupt in 2024. So clearly we have to act. I think the House Republicans did make an initial attempt with the Medicare reform and the Medicaid reforms that were in our House budget, although they're meeting with no reception in the Senate. And I'm currently working on a bill myself to try to help to address the Social Security problem of solvency. I, at some point, hope to have finished and bring back to you, Jerry.
All right, well, we'd love to hear about it, but I have to ask you the first question about Medicare and Medicaid. Yes, Republicans had a plan, the Paul Ryan plan that they've put forward, and no, they haven't gotten a lot of support from anybody, and now they're running away from it at the very time we need it. Why aren't Republicans standing by their suggested reforms?
Well, I think a lot of the House Republicans are. I would not say that the House Republicans have run away from it. We voted for it. It's there. We've gone out and tried to talk about it. We're continuing to talk about it, convince the American people that it's helpful. I think also what House Republicans should do is point out that this is not the sole solution. As you know, Jerry, the problem that we have with health care in the United States today is the government wants to, under Obamacare, try to control the supply.
Right. But I want to keep you on this point of Republicans and where they are on reform, because I have the very clear sense from statements by people like John Boehner, the majority leader in the House, and others, that maybe Ryan's plan isn't something that they want to really stand behind. What's going to happen to that plan? Is it by the wayside? Are we going to wait maybe a year, 2 years, and it resurfaces?
Well, I don't think that should be the case, and I can't speak for Speaker Boehner. It's an interesting phrase in and of itself. But the reality remains, House Republicans like myself support it, especially in conjunction with the necessary changes to allow the supply of health care to expand to meet the demand so that we can start to diminish the costs of the program, which, as we've talked about, is projected for insolvency. House Republicans would be making a mistake to try to turn away from reform, because that is precisely what we were elected to do. It would further undercut any more attempts to reform it, to expand the supply of health care, to reform Medicare, Medicaid, and let alone take on the Social Security. So I would argue that any Republican that is trying to run away from entitlement reform will not only face the wrath of the Democrats, where that's to be expected, but they will face the wrath of the vast majority of American people who want to see these issues dealt with. So I would encourage my colleagues that are tempted to try to run, I would remind them, you can run, but you can't hide, nor should you try.
Well, clearly they're already hiding, and I think people are already noticing. I ask you, though, about something people are starting to talk about over again. It's been talked about in the past, a balanced budget amendment. Should we do that? Should we put in place an amendment to the Constitution to balance the federal budget?
I think we absolutely should. I come from Michigan, a state with a balanced budget amendment. What we have in Washington today is the highest authority on spending is Congress. What we need to do, Jerry, is put the sovereign American people in the room through a constitutional balanced budget amendment that says to Congress there are things you cannot do unless you can produce a balanced budget. You cannot overspend, you cannot borrow, you cannot put us in a fiscal situation where we're talking about debt ceilings and running out of money for Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. So to put the people in the room is to put a guard, the ultimate power in the country, in that room to prevent the very type of spending that has brought us to this precipice.
Right. And I have to ask you about this before you go. We don't have a ton of time. A lot of discussion about aid to Pakistan right now. I know this is an issue that's near and dear to your heart. What should we do? Should we cut off aid to Pakistan, or should we continue to give them money?
No, as we've seen from the 80 people and more that were killed in a suicide bombing in revenge against the government of Pakistan, what the United States should not do is try to cause the victory of getting bin Laden and bringing him to justice into a defeat whereby we strain our relationship with Pakistan, cause problems within that country, which is currently being attacked by terrorists, and lead to the destabilization of a nuclear-armed country in that region. It's going to be a tense relationship. We should continue to try to improve upon it. But right now, to simply cut and run on them is going to do nothing but further encourage the very types of people that are killing Americans and Pakistanis.
Well, it's a big debate. Lots of people on either side. Fascinating conversation. Congressman, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry.